There are those that believe that life here began out there, far across the universe, with tribes of humans who may have been the forefathers of the Egyptians, or the Toltecs, or the Mayans. Some believe there may be brothers of man who even now fight to survive somewhere beyond the heavens. Welcome to Mulletstar Galactica, your look at the 1978 Battlestar Galactica, with your hosts Adam O'Brien, the lethal Mullet, Kevin the Raidernerd Reitzel, Kyle Wagner, and of course the one, the only, Davis Grayson. Brought to you by Fandom Podcast Network and the Lethal Mullet.
And welcome, folks, to the very first episode of Mulletstar Galactica, a celebration of the 1978 series, the classic that gave us the first looks at, of course, the ship you see behind me right now, the Battlestar itself, Galactica, and, of course, its merry amount of huge, amazing characters, heroes, and, of course, the Cylons they were battling, and, of course, the Vipers, which we love so much. Here on the FPN, and of course, courtesy of Lethal Mullet, we've got this new show which is going to be looking at the entire series of course, this Cylon battle that the humans from Caprica and many other settlements had to do in 1978. And it really captured the imagination of those in the 1970s for science fiction after, of course, the explosion of Star Wars, and designed by, of course, Ralph McQuarrie and many of the effects artists like John Dykstra. And that from Star Wars, we've got this great series. And that we're going to be looking at today, courtesy, of course, as we said, of Fandom Podcast Network. But joining me for this amazing ride, and we're going to bring them in one by one, we've got first up the co-founder, along with, of course, Kyle Wagner, who might be joining us a little bit later. I am, of course, your host, Mullet Dharma. But we first up have, of course, Raidernerd himself, Kevin the Raidernerd Reitzel. Buddy, how are you?
What is going on, man? Good to see you. How are you?
Never look better. Look at that hair.
I know. I miss those feathered days of hair. So yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you check us out on YouTube. We're having some fun with some slides up here.
We are. I mean, those jackets, those suede jackets, look just the gold buckle. I mean, we got to get those for cosplay one day. I tell you.
Good to be here, man. I'm excited. I'm excited. This series had a huge impact on me, so I'm excited.
You know, as people that grew up in the wake of Star Wars, and you know, obviously the collecting of that too, this was one of those things too. And I know somebody that we're going to hear right now is literally eager to launch his Viper. We have the amazing Davis Grayson here joining us here today from the other side of the US, mate. How are you?
Oh, how you doing, fellas? How's it going?
Doing good, buddy. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. I am so glad to be here. And like you said, I enjoyed the original Battlestar Galactica just as much as the original Star Wars.
It was a real slice of, this new science fiction, which, had a bit of rock and roll to it, I think, personally. We had, obviously, Star Trek, and we had 2001 was a huge one, too, for the model work and stuff like that. But this was like, now the models are really moving, and they're really coming at you. And there was sort of a 3D sort of feel to it, don't you think, Kevin?
Definitely. Back then the effects for the show blew us out of the water. I mean, obviously we had Star Wars, and let's be honest, this was pretty much the TV version of Star Wars. But it wasn't cheap. It wasn't like, B grade. It was great science fiction television for us. And it was great to be able to see it weekly as well. And for those of us lucky to, for those out there that were lucky enough to see the actual movie on the big screen, was a big deal for us.
Oh, exactly. Now, David, we grew up, obviously, as we said, the Star Wars phenomena had already kicked in and been around for about 12 months. And, there's obviously the media blitz of the movie itself going out. And then there was that huge, blitz of toys and clothes and, bubble gum, the whole lot. But for you, when Battlestar came out, as somebody that enjoys all that sort of stuff, what was the thing that hit you as a kid that really, you just wanted to watch the show, collect all that sort of stuff?
I think because it was about the same time as Star Wars. I wanted the action figures, and I did get the action figures. I got a Starbuck and I got a Muffet, and the Viper. I never saw one that actually came out action figure size. I do have the action figure. I mean, the Micro Machines versions of the Viper, or not Micro Machines, the Titanium from Hasbro. But
Hold that up to the camera. Let's see that a little close. That's pretty cool. Yeah, nice. Very cool.
I mean, it's very detailed. The only thing lacking was just the landing gears, but still, it's an amazing little detail, and especially with the Cylon Raider as well.
Love that Cylon Raider. I remember that was the one toy I did have was a Cylon Raider. Thought that was so cool.
I got the little ones with the micro figures. It was the Stellar Probe, not the Stellar Probe, but the one that could go up. It had wheels on it.
Yeah,
I forget what the name of it is, but I still thought it was just so cool. I mean, it was so cool. And then finally, back in 2014, I met all of Red Squadron, had a picture with them, and I tell you, it was a dream come true. And I told them, I said, I am among greats. I just want you to know that. And they all laughed and they gave me a big hug and everything. So.
That's amazing. You know, there's so many people related to obviously the creation of this amazing franchise still with us and going to a lot of those conventions. And some of the stuff we'll talk about very, very soon, folks, too. But before we get too far ahead, let you know where you can catch this show and many others like it. You can catch, of course, all of our shows on the Fandom Podcast Network at fpnet.podbean.com, where you can catch, of course, Culture Clash and Couch Potato Theatre, all the greats that, of course, Kevin and Kyle put together to cover movies and the latest news in pop culture. You catch, of course, Blood of Kings, our Highlander podcast. It's an immortal podcast. It just goes on and on and on about, of course, the amazing Highlander franchise. And I do believe Kevin might be part of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Along with, of course, my pal in the martial arts world, Lee Fillingsness. We also have Lethal Mullet looking at, of course, 80s, 90s and beyond, of course, action film and cinema. We recently just covered Leviathan, which is a little bit of slice of late 80s, trying to catch up with that sort of Deep Star 6 and the Abyss sort of feel. And that was a great one to look at. We've got Peter Weller and is that Raider Elizondo or Hector Elizondo? I can't tell.
It made me realize if I go bald, I could pull it off. So I like
that. So, guys, you've got Chicago Hope and Robocop on the same thing. I mean, bring it on, and Amanda Pays. Next episode, 268, will be out in the next week, which is covering, of course, John G. Barrett and, of course, Keith Vitale and, of course, American Kickboxer 1, which was shot in South Africa. And actually has the director of Wolverine, X-Men Origins, Gavin Hood, as part of that too, because he's a South African native too. So he's part of the film community down there. And that's quite a good little kickboxing movie. So we're obviously covering a little bits and pieces of that. Believe it or not, one of the last canon films to be distributed as well at the time too. So, but we're looking at that and a history of some of those kickboxers very, very soon on that channel. So keeping up with that. Obviously, we've got all the other shows, lots of Doctor Who on there with Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, and much, much more. Kev, where can we find you on the web?
You can find me, of course, here on the Fandom Podcast Network. You can find me on, X and Instagram and Letterbox and all that at Spartan_Phoenix. Of course, you can also find me on Blue Sky now at Spartan Phoenix.
Nice. And Davis Grayson, where can we find your amazing photography?
Oh, well, you can find me on Instagram at Springer_2017, or you can also find me on Instagram with Peregrine_Outpost. That is where I'm showcasing my world building and diorama techniques.
Exactly. It's fantastic. So one of the greats we're going to be looking at too with this series is obviously some of the great model work that's being done, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode, and some of the groups which actually, thanks to Davis, we've been able to find. I think is just fantastic. This community is so alive still today, and really showing where things can go. I think is just fantastic. All right, so let's head into the news, folks.
Welcome now to the news here on Mulletstar Galactica, as we check out what is happening in the wild world of the web.
Okay, so for our first episode looking at obviously the series, I want to talk a little bit about some of the many times they've tried to bring this show back. And they've had one massive successful attempt at it, obviously in the 2000s. But what we're also going to be talking about is the greatness, of course, of 1980. Obviously got the sort of engines burning for something down the lines. But Peacock have been trying to do another reboot, which would be attached to the Ronald D. Moore series a little while ago. But they've had 5 years of development, and for some reason just won't be able to pull it off. And obviously there was also the movie version, which Bryan Singer was trying to put together just before the Ronald D. Moore. And I think, this franchise could definitely do movies, but I think long-form storytelling like TV is the way it should go. Kevin, what are your ideas of this TV version versus movies? Where do you think it sits when it comes to its form of storytelling?
I think starting it off with the movie, I think is good, or like a mini series like the reboot did early in the 2000s and stuff. But I think television long form is the best way to tell this story. And I would love to see another incarnation of it. And, speaking of news, I recently picked up this little beauty right here. This is the official 1978 Battlestar Galactica scrapbook by James Nayland here. And this is the original edition right here. And I just want to showcase. This is the type of stuff that got us excited about the movie and the TV series as I thumb through the pages here, because it's a really nice breakdown of this. And this is how you got your information back then. If you didn't have, obviously we didn't have the internet, but with now today's streaming and such, I think that and the production value that we've seen through streaming, guys, I think it definitely lends well to doing the TV series. And, with streaming now, if you look at the original TV series too, there were some episodes of the TV series that, didn't necessarily tie into the bigger picture, kind of were, one-off shots, stuff like that. But with the tight budgets and how expensive it is production-wise, I think that they can tell a nice tight story within a season or two of Battlestar Galactica. And I would really, really like to see them end a much more, with the reboot that we got in early 2000, I didn't get the ending that I wanted. I wanted them to visit Earth, but in current time, kind of like what we got with Galactica 1980, but done much better. yeah.
I think that's important, is the fact that, the type of story being told. I mean, David, you remember, obviously, we've had these great ones where we've had movie versions, like, obviously, the Living Legend got turned into this two-parter, which I think was fantastic. I saw it at the drive-in, many years after the fact, mind you, and to see, the big head of a certain Lloyd Bridges up there doing his whole, triumphant, smash of the. He smashed up the Cylons pretty damn good in that. But do you think something like that might work for, a modern audience?
I'd like to think so, just because if you look at the original Battlestar Galactica, yeah, some bad things happen, but more importantly, there was a lot of positive stuff that happened, and it wasn't like all dark and dismal. Not to discredit the reboot or anything, because it was good for its time and it was good, but it was a bit dark, and I couldn't binge watch like 6 hours of it, because afterwards I'm like, all right, I need a break. I need to watch something a little bit more upbeat.
It's a tough watch at times. Yeah.
Very grim.
Absolutely.
Very grim. Yeah.
And yes, I know science fiction does mirror our society a lot. And some good dark science fiction is okay every now and then, because For All Mankind, which is also created by Ronald D. Moore, there's some pretty intense stuff to it. But overall, it has a good meaning about hope, the future, and wanting humanity to prosper. And I think a lot of it, I think what was missed with the reboot as opposed to the original was that optimism, that knowing that we're all going to be okay if we work together with this, which, is a little bit of Star Trek as well. But, that being said, I would love to see a reboot. What I really would love is to see, and I know Ron Moore's BSG actually did a little bit of snippet to it, seeing from the Pegasus point of view, seeing what happened, but take it a little bit different, and then have like a Battlestar Galactica and then a Battlestar Pegasus miniseries, and showing them kind of like how You Met Your Mother, just kind of combined together. And I can't believe I put How I Met Your Mother in this thing, but
And with Battlestar.
it's that kind of like bringing them together, seeing both sides of the coin.
How I Met Your Battlestar.
How I Met Your Battlestar. But and like you said, Kevin, I mean, there are, like we talked about earlier, is the seeing them come to Earth on present day would have been great. Of course, since Glenn Larson did create Buck Rogers, and somebody did this on the internet long time ago. They video edited a lot of stuff. Battlestar meet Buck Rogers.
It's the same world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I mean, and in the second season of Buck Rogers, they were looking for the 13 tribes that went missing.
There you go. Yeah.
This is true, 100%. Now, obviously, folks, with so many different editions of the show, it's hard to, over the years, look at what is canon, what is your own head canon of this series. For me personally, I look back on, obviously, the original series very fondly, and have enjoyed the other editions, 1980 in particular, quite enjoyed that for what it was. But I always go back to, what is important to you is the Battlestar that it is for you. For me, it is the original series and, of course, Richard Hatch's series of novels, which, not only took and included parts of 1980, so some of the characters like Boxy, these novels then expanded on the vision. And Richard Hatch had a really, I think, mystical vision of the future, one that was really built around a very Stargate-like ancient aliens sort of look at the Kabbalion history, if you like, and where that 13th tribe was. And we would have gotten to see that down the line and where they went, who was really behind things, and how important Patrick Macnee's character, of course, Count Ibley, really plays into things. And you only have to read the first book, Armageddon, to really get a sense of these things. And back in the late 90s, when, of course, the first book was written, he went around to all over the place. He went to Australia in particular and was on a number of TV shows and radio shows talking about his continuation and how it differed somewhat from Glenn A. Larson's vision, but also how it literally took that original series and took it to its most logical parts. And sadly, we didn't get a conclusion, did we, Davis?
No, unfortunately not. And if you ever sat in with Richard Hatch talking about Galactica Second Coming, is that what it was called? Yes. And watching the trailer and seeing everyone's reaction, it was absolutely amazing. I mean, everyone was just on their feet, just applauding. I mean, it was just such a grandiose idea that bringing back something that was only one season and it bring back this series that could just be really great, and seeing just like the next generation of Battlestar characters.
It literally was. It was a continuation. We had Ibley came back in the second book, Warhawk, and we'd seen that. Ibley even said in his episodes, "You'll see your father again," to Sheba, and it wasn't just a ploy. He meant it. That he was still out there, that he had this penchant for survival, and I think down the line that would have been even bigger. I mean, he even has a play against obviously Apollo at one stage there, like he does his father. So, look, folks, the books are out there. They're no longer in production, but you can find them. They do go for quite a few pennies. So, I think for the average Battlestar fan, well worth your time. So, we're going to get into it, folks. We're going to be chatting about the first episode, which was actually the movie as well, back in 1978. For those that have seen it, it's called Saga of a Star World. This is the first episode, which is basically the first three put together. And obviously, it's a great introduction. We get to see Adama. We get to see, obviously, Zach and Apollo. And, of course, Dirk Benedict as the one and only Starbuck, the fan favorite. So we're going to look at the series as per episode that we do this show and have a look at exactly how they affected us and, of course, what stuck out. And particularly the clothing, folks, I got to tell you. And, well, Athena. too. So we're going to look at that today. Folks, let's first talk about the cast before we get really into it. First off, Richard Hatch, Captain Apollo. Obviously, he'd worked in television before this as well. Done some cop shows as well. Even worked with Mark Hamill at one stage there too with the San Francisco crime series. What are our thoughts on Richard Hatch, Kevin?
I thought he was. I thought he really came across as a good leader, and it was also cool too in some of the scenes that he stood up to his father Adama, and I think Dama really kind of bounced well off him. And plus, you know, he's a good leading man as well, and he's a good actor too. I thought he was really good in dashing, so to speak. And I, you know, obviously I love the scenes with him and Starbuck as well. But I thought he was good.
Fantastic. And Davis, you obviously met him once or twice. What are your thoughts on Richard as not just as an actor, but just as a person as well?
He is what you see is really what he is. I mean, he seemed like a very genuine, down-to-earth person. He would talk to you. You know how some actors or even some creators, when you start mentioning something about the hobby or anything, and they just get this glaze over their eyes and they're like, I don't really want to hear that. You know, not saying anything bad, but some people are like that. But when speaking with him, he had the same passion, like he had just finished filming Battlestar Galactica. I mean, it was just, he had the fire in him still. He was just wanting to talk about it. I mean, you could just sit and talk with him for hours on end if you needed to. I mean, that's what I felt that he was like. And I really was sad to hear when he passed away, because I felt like I lost a member of my family, even though I've met him a few times and I thought he was just a really just super guy, but it was a very sad time when he passed away.
Yeah, I think the way he played Apollo came across as that very classic hero sort of archetype. But, you know, he was also somebody that stood up for the morals, you know, that we all should. Very different character than obviously Jamie Bamber played in the reboot. But I think the big thing about him is he had a really good sense of story, not just as an actor, as a writer as well. And then later on, he played obviously Tom Zarek in the Reimagined series. But he also played a Klingon, also, folks, in a Star Trek feature, fan feature, I should say, which you can get. And he's also, he did his own series that he was working on called The Great War of Magellan as well, which if you haven't seen the trailer is actually pretty cool. And they've got these starships, like the Vipers. I think they were called stilettos, if I remember right, something like that. But they've got their own sort of feel and look. And have you guys seen that?
No.
I saw the trailer for Magellan, and how he described it was basically there was a cave on the moon of Titan, and there was a book, that the Great War of Magellan, and some people have discovered that, and then you start harking back to that time when they read what actually happened. It was like a depository of different bits of knowledge and everything. One of the cool things about Axanar was in 2014 when I met him. That's when he was actually going over some of the lines of Axanar. So when he was in
Axanar is the Star Trek fan film production, right?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. But one of the cool things about it, he was in line. He was sitting at his table, and he has the script in his hand. And so what he's doing the whole time, he is talking, and he is like doing this and, you know, doing that and doing different little themes. And this guy looked at me and says, "What is he doing?" I said, he's also a Klingon in the new Star Trek fan film Axanar. I said he's rehearsing his lines because when I talked to him, he's like, here's the script. I can't show you, but I need to learn it real quick while I'm here. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
That's gold. Obviously, next big one up, folks. Dirk Benedict, the one and only Faceman himself, playing Starbuck. Buck.
My man.
Yeah, man, best hair in the business. And of course, the stylish card playing scoundrel. Kind of the Han Solo of this series. I mean, Kevin's definitely your favorite, surely.
Oh yeah, definitely. Starbuck was the guy, and he had really nice swagger too. He always had the cigar and stuff, and he was fighting between two ladies to get his attention, Cassiopeia and Athena, and there are some really good scenes there. And I was an Athena guy, so I wanted them to get together. But yeah, and he was just a good buddy, and he even had good moments with Boomer too. It's just the dashing guy.
Yeah, Davis, your thoughts?
I actually had the pleasure of meeting him as well, and super nice guy. And how he actually signs his autographs sometimes is he does a star and buck.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
So a star and then a dollar sign, Starbuck. But yeah, I loved him as a character. I thought he was always just fascinating. And little trivia, Starbuck was the only of all the action figures made. Starbuck was the only Colonial Viper pilot.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember Richard Hatch said he didn't want his likeness unless he had a little bit more cash, and that's interesting sort of point. Now, what's great about Dirk is, I don't know if I can say it on radio, but there's a friend I know who can vouch that this is one of the nicest guys in the industry.
Yeah,
nice. Like really is. Like just down to earth. Can I say it on that? No bullshits person, just tells it how it is. And who else would you want to be like that? Because I tell you what, Apollo's dad in this is kind of the same, but he's also Ben Cartwright, the one and only Lorne Green playing Commander Adama. Now, I can't remember how old Lorne is by this stage, but he's done 400 seasons of Bonanza by this stage.
That's how I knew him. Yeah. Yeah.
And he had that classic sort of drawl. I mean, Kevin, surely you've seen enough Bonanza reruns in your time.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the two mainstays we watched when I was a kid growing up in the house was Westerns and World War II movies. And I remember Bonanza, memorable opening theme song as well. And and then my dad's like, "Oh my God, Bonanza in space? What?" So, yeah.
It really is. And think about it, there is a little bit of a stagecoach atmosphere to this kind of. I mean, Davis, what are your thoughts on Lorne leading the ship in the Galactica and particularly in this first episode?
Oh, I thought he was excellent. And like what Kevin said, there was a comedian that one time that said, Lorne Green, that's like Bonanza in space. And but I mean, he does have a commanding presence about him. I mean, he does have that, you would think he would be typecasted, but
let's just be honest. Let's be honest here. He had a Davis Grayson voice. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, did he ever?
I mean, whenever he's on, he's like fleeing the Cylon tyranny, the great Battlestar.
Gold, absolute gold. Guys, we're going to jump to, of course, one of the villains. That is, of course, well, whether you see him as a villain, that's on both shows. John Colicos as Count Bolta. And, you got to say, he always had that suede, you talk about swagger. He rocked the suede really well in this series, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. I know he was in the original Star Trek, and then they brought back his character in a Deep Space Nine episode, if I remember correctly. And this is how I know him, as Baltar, the one human that, was traitor against his own humans, and he worked with Cylons. And I know there was a question of whether or not he died because it looked like he gets beheaded in the film. But no, they liked him so much they brought him back, and I loved his arc. I thought he was great. And when you get to sit up in like a 15-foot tall chair and look down on people, it's great. I don't know how he got up there, but who cares?
Yeah, I know. Dave, don't you have one of these in your lounge room for watching the reruns?
It's like, what's up, dear? How's it going up there? I am in my Baltar chair. I look down on you.
You just need Lucifer to come and bring you the drinks,
Yeah.
by your command. What are your thoughts on Baltar, Davis?
Oh, I loved him. And I remember watching him in the original Star Trek. He was Kor, son of, I forget who, but Kor was amazing Klingon as it is. But he was always so great. And yeah, I thought that he died, but in the original movies, but he did come back. But I always loved when Count Iblis came upon them and said, I'll get Baltar to you. And Baltar sees Count Iblis, and he's like, I know that voice. I know you can't be that voice. You can't be him. I know who you are. And it was just always really cool. And he played the part of a villain so well.
Really did. He had that presence, and I think he's always had that. Well, he's not just a screen actor; he's also a stage actor. So he's got that command of the room sort of atmosphere, the voice, and he always did between the Cylons. I mean, he had more time with the Cylons than anyone else. I think obviously in those scenes too. One of the great ones we'll get to in a few months' time will be, of course, the Living Legend Part 2. Where he has that sort of comic atmosphere with one of the Cylons, where the Cylon goes, that Battlestar is heading for us. He goes, what are you talking about, you freak? It's in front of us. No, the one on the left. And he goes, oh! But we'll get to that a little later, folks. Saga of Star Wars was the original pilot for the 78 series. It aired September 17, 1978, and it depicts the Cylon surprise attack on the 12 colonies of man, destroying all but one colony and forcing the surviving humans to flee on the last remaining Battlestar, the Galactica. So this is the original series, which was cancelled after one season. This is the beginning of it. And the big thing is that I think even the reimagined series kind of just took more from this than it did the rest of the series and made it its own thing. But the pilot itself, the full title is Saga of a Star World, and officially Battlestar Galactica, a Saga of a Star World. It shows basically the Cylons as a robotic race in this version of it, launching a surprise attack on the 12 colonies of man, devastating most of humanity, especially the colony of Caprica. And the Battlestar Galactica survived the attack, getting away. The surviving humans, led by, of course, Commander Adama, must flee their homes and embark on a desperate search for the 13th colony of man. Now, when this first came out, I think the big thing was, of course, the hullabaloo between, of course, George Lucas and John Dykstra. And, of course, those that weren't doing anything worked because they'd already finished Star Wars. So they're like, what's the next job, folks? And Dykstra, of course, took the Dystraflex camera and went off and did his work on this series with a bunch of the guys from Van Nuys. And, of course, that's really what we saw it as. As Kevin mentioned earlier, you put it the best way, Kev. It was Star Wars for TV, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And, at the time, when you look back now, you didn't really care or know that this was trying to rip off Star Wars. And to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't even have any comparison to Star Wars other than it was spaceships and stuff like that, because the story is completely different. There's several Star Wars ripoffs out there. One of the more famous ones is Star Crash, which I think was a Roger Corman. That's a Star Wars ripoff, but this one was not. It was just it had its own story, and the mystery that these people who are fleeing from the tyranny of these robotic creatures and trying to find Earth, and you're like you're drawn right in, and it had drama in between some of the characters. It had some great action scenes, and then you start realizing later, well, they're kind of recycling some of the footage of some of the starships and stuff, but you didn't catch that right up, but what was more important though was the drama between the characters, and they weren't afraid to kill a couple people off in the first main movie as well. And it's funny too, because I have the I have the whole Blu-ray collection. It was actually the definitive collection, the 35th anniversary. That's the one I got here on Blu-ray, which included, of course, the original series, the original movie, which they did release on 4K recently, and of course, Galactica 1980. And also, too, I just want to clarify, because I found this out. If you want to, they have it on iTunes digital as well. And the episodes, they have all the TV episodes, but the first 3 episodes are actually the movie in an episodic form. So you can go ahead and watch that. But if you want an uncut version where you don't see, what happened last week or something like that, then you have to get these versions as well. But yeah, to me, it wasn't a Star Wars ripoff, even though technically they were trying to have a space show on television that you didn't have to go to the movie theater for, even though they did release the original film in the theaters.
Now, David, I've got to say, I know for certain you're a Viper fan. You love the Vipers. But when you first saw the catapult launch these things, what were your thoughts? Was this better than the X-Wing? Was it something you're just like, wow, where did that come from?
I looked at the Battlestar as a futuristic aircraft carrier because, just to see them launch out of the launching tubes, which is right on the bow, right on the left side of the shuttle of the arms itself. You could see the launch tubes right there, but just having them launch out, it was just such a cool experience to see. Because we never actually saw them land, except for maybe just like a couple of times, just saw them already landing. But when they took off, they still took off like there was like a bat out of hell, so to speak. But that is a magnificent ship. And the reimagined Battlestar, I did like how they had the rockets on all the sides, so you could see how it would actually turn and adjust. And they had some really cool special effects, especially one time when they were going to do the jump and you see all the ships come in and some of them are still just floating about, and then they make the jump even when they're just inside.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah.
It's so good. I think, the big thing is, and here's a sort of left field question. Kev, if you're in a Viper and you're about to catapult out, what's your soundtrack?
Oh yeah, probably probably some Twisted Sister, We're Not Going to Take It, maybe something like that, or some AC/DC, something like that. Yeah, definitely some 80s metal. That's where I'm going at it.
What about you, Davis?
The first song comes to mind is Stan Bush's "Never Surrender."
There you go.
And then
Yes.
a little Thunderstruck.
There you go. AC/DC. Little Thunder. That's a good one right there. Now you're talking.
That's good. That's Viper FM, mate, right there. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the plot for you guys that probably haven't seen it before, because this is an older series. If you're coming back from obviously the reimagined, it's slightly different canon. So it's set in a distant star system known as the 7th millennium of time. 12 colonies of humans living on a different worlds have been fighting for 1,000 years against the Cylons, this race of robotic humanoids, would you say? Because they don't really know who they are yet, who seek to exterminate all of humanity. The Cylons have unexpectedly sued for peace through the diplomatic agency of Lord Baltar, Count Baltar himself. The leaders, the Council of the 12, one is a representative of each of the colonies, all there sued for peace together with the powerful battlestars that got assembled to, of course, keep the peace at the time of the armistice. But with this time, they get an attack on, of course, Caprica and all the worlds as the Cylons turn up. And this is basically the foundation of where we are, when, of course, Zach and Apollo go out on their first mission to check out a Cylon fuel tanker, which looks like it's unarmed from the first point. And, of course, Zach, this is his first mission. Usually it would have been Starbuck, but, of course, he says, Starbuck, can you, act as if you're sick? And Saga, he's got his cigar there, and, of course, Starbuck's like, oh, okay, and, of course...
Zach who wanted Jesse's girl, right? Yeah.
No, I think that's what he was in the Viper to find, Jesse's girl.
Yeah, Rick Springfield, young Rick
Yes.
Springfield getting into the acting, so yeah.
That's right. There you go. First Viper pilot you see is an Aussie, folks. That's right. Rick Springfield, who, of course, later claimed, of course, more to be more American-based pop star at the time. But yeah, he is literally out on a ship, taken out, of course, with Apollo, with their Vipers, and they get into trouble when the entire fleet of the Cylon Raiders and, of course, Base Stars turns up. And Zach's Viper is crippled, and he can't make it all the way back. So Apollo jumps ahead of it and lets the fleet know that they have to get out of there. And, of course, unfortunately, Zach dies, just like in the other story. And we get to see the start of what is, unfortunately, the end of the Capricorn planet and civilization there too, along with all the other colonies. And with all the other ships, the 200 or so that they have, they flee. And, of course, the only Battlestar that's left at the time that they know of is Galactica. This is the setting for, obviously, what will become a survival story, folks. But this one is them on the run for the movie, The Saga of the Star World. What do you think of the opening of this film, Kevin?
I loved the way that it started off, especially with the voiceover and just kind of taking us into their world. And it really set us up. And, you know, one of the most underrated things about this series that really kind of hits a really huge nostalgic core for me is the freaking music. The music is just phenomenal, and it just pulls you right in, including up to the closing credits and stuff. And you can see from the beginning too, the production value is pretty darn good.
It really is. I mean, Stu Phillips' score is in its own sort of world. You know, it's not like John Williams. It's got a key that you know straight away. You know that hook. I mean, Davis, you know straight away those notes. Once they're there, it really hooks you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, you know, Entrada, it's probably about, maybe about 6-7 years ago now, they actually released expanded editions of the soundtracks. And it was like 4 volumes of Battlestar Galactica. And volume 2 sold out completely. I mean, so quickly that there's just no way to grab it. I found volume 1. They're 2 disc collections, and I found volume 3, but they're very pricey. Like you said, Kevin, it's some of the best music that you see, because when you listen to it, you can replay the episode in your head, like where it's happening, what's happening, what's going on. I mean, it was everything. The special effects, the story, and the music was just a synergy together that just made the show memorable, and reason why we're talking about it nearly 50 years later.
It really is. I mean, the fact that, again, classic scores like that don't age, like the rock and roll ones or hip hop ones or rap runs that they do for each time. And I think that's what's key about this one too. So the colonies are in ruins. Adama collects as many people as he can on as many ships as he can to keep, obviously, the civilians alive and protected by the Galactica. So from here, of course, he comes up with the idea to basically look for the lost Cabolians. So in this case, is the last Lord of Cabal, and the planet for which, of course, they're all looking for, of course, is Earth. So it gives them a myth to strive for. It's something in this version of things is actually real, not in the reimagined one where it's used as basically a blanket of hope, if you like. So from here, this is where we get to see a lot of the myth about the 13th tribes of man migrating to the stars, and, of course, helping Adama in the quest as Apollo Starbuck, Lieutenant Boomer, and, of course, more fighter pilots, along with, of course, Colonel Ty, who's the second in command. So one thing we're going to do here with the cast, guys, is we're going to be talking about them as they come up in the episodes. Obviously, Sheba will be one will come up a little bit later. We'll get to see some of the other pilots as well. These first 3 episodes is really the core of the characters based in it too. The Galactica and the fugitive fleet escape the Cylons by crossing the nova of Madagon, a massive, extremely hot starfield, which the Cylons have mined and find brief respite on the resort planet of Carolon. Now, this is where we get some really, let's just say, campy casino-style atmosphere, and Starbuck is at his heart in this part of the pilot, is he not, Kevin?
Oh God, yeah. He, when he can gamble and and hang out, and and then there's the 4-eyed 2-mouth dancers, which were kind of creepy, but he can chat with them as well, and then that there's some sinister stuff going behind the scenes with the Ovians and stuff like that. It's great, whenever it's funny too, because when they come up on I think it's him and Jolly, if I remember correctly, or him and Boomer. And
Bobby's
all
in
of a
the
sudden,
boomer, yeah.
some party goer just comes out of nowhere. He's like, "What's going on?" And then there's like this hidden party going on here. So yeah, it's a good time, and he knows how to make the most of it, So yeah.
And of course, we have, Maren Jensen as Athena here, where they're down on the planet. Athena, obviously Apollo's sister. And I tell you what, if you read Armageddon in particular, you get a whole new slice of Athena. Not only is she beautiful and commanding presence, she actually also runs for the commander position of the Galactica as well after the passing of, obviously, Adama. Athena, what are our thoughts, Davis?
Oh, she's a bad character. And like you said, I wish Starbuck and her would have got together because she was always my crush for sure. I mean, and having her actually later on be a pilot was even cooler. I mean, that was one of the cool things to see that.
It was hotter. That's what it was. Oh man, I crushed hard on Athena, man. I still do.
And
Jensen, hot.
Absolutely. And even to this day, she still has that same beauty. She's like a CEO of some skincare company.
Yeah, I heard that in New York somewhere. Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, she's amazing. So,
but I think Richard Hatch did the character so well in the novels and gave it even more story, to really push it too. So with that too, obviously going to Carolon, there's the entertainment atmosphere, but there's something shady going on behind the scenes where they're getting not only the pilots but also some of the members of the Battlestar itself. And let's just say there's a race of aliens that might be doing something nefarious with those bodies. There's pretty creepy atmosphere. What did you think, Kevin?
Yeah, this was creepy watching this as a kid because you have these weird kind of like bug alien creatures with the 4 arms and the 2 feet, and they're like cocooning and capturing the humans. And I remember these action figures when I was a kid, even creepier. Then you have this queen down there, so you have kind of like this bug race basically that's capturing the I think they're using the party atmosphere of this casino as a ruse to capture these people and abduct them. So yeah.
And I mean, Davis, we've got all this going on, but we've also got a nemesis for Adama here in the casino atmosphere with Sayuri, who's this old guy who's always saying, "Oh, calm down, Adama. Just come down here. There's plenty of food for everyone. We'll make sure everyone's fine." And it's that classic old, "Don't worry, she'll be right" sort of atmosphere. And he has no clue what's going on behind the scenes as they obviously bring down the Viper pilots to give them awards and all that sort of stuff. Sayuri was definitely a foil for Lorne Green's character. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it was, you knew there was something up because he just seemed like that, not really a bad guy, but just holier than thou, so to speak. And even one of the Viper pilots, unfortunately, went down that elevator and got taken out by the ovioids. I think that's what they were called.
Ovioids,
if I remember correctly. Yeah. But I do love at the end when everyone's trying to evacuate and Apollo's like, "We need to get out of here now." And then the Cylons come in and Sayuri's like, "You listen to that man."
Turns pretty fast. Obviously, too, the gag of sending people down to Carolon to the banquet in Viper uniforms that are just like mechanics and, like the kitchen crew, so that they can actually launch Vipers properly, obviously, too. Now, we have that great scene where we see the Vipers sitting on the planet's surface. We had a bit of that in Caprica, but it was nice to see that, that they can literally launch from anywhere. There's a VTOL sort of atmosphere to them. It's a very tactile craft. I don't think I had that sense in the Reimagined series of the stability, the rugged sort of nature of these things, because they were all digital, obviously. But there's something about the Mark. Well, what are these? The Mark Ones, I guess. The Mark One Vipers.
Yeah.
They are just built to withstand a lot more stuff, and they have that sort of tactile military aspect to them. But anyway, those scenes, and obviously have this massive battle against the Cylons at the end here. I think a lot of those shots have been reused in the TV show, folks. So I have to say, like in between here and there. I mean, it's done with every series. Let's just say, you know, there's a bank of effects that they keep up. But there's something about the Cylon Raiders. Now, obviously, you showed the model before. Here we are. This is a ship which, to look at it, you know exactly what it's going to do. It's an alien craft, looks like flying saucer, but it just looks like it's mean. You know, it looks bad guy. What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I love the shape of this thing. I love the cockpit in it. And I remember the toy, you would like pull open the ends and then you would see the gun on each side, like in the little like crevasse thing there. And I just thought it was like one of the coolest looking starships I've ever seen, to be honest with you. In a way, I kind of like it more than the Viper, you know, and it holds 3 Cylons in it as well. It's just because it looks very menacing, you know, and you know, I love this shots of the Cylons inside. Like I'm wondering, like, is the guy in the back, what's he doing? Is he the gunner? You know, which one's the pilot? You know, and I just thought that was kind of cool that you had 3 Cylons per Raider. I thought that was really neat. Then you had, of course, they all came from the base star too, which is also very ominous.
Now, Davis, I've got to say, obviously, you know the Richard Hatch lore. One of the coolest things in Armageddon is obviously Starbuck goes missing at the start in the first chapter, and he returns a little bit later as Richard Hatch's Apollo finds him. But how they get out and what weapons they use later are really, really interesting, considering Starbuck commandeers a Cylon Raider.
Mm-hmm. And
this is the one where he does like the little waggle thing so they know that not to shoot him, right? Is that what that one was?
That was later on in the TV series.
Okay, that was later on. That's right.
Yeah. And it's really funny when you look at a Cylon Raider as opposed to the Viper, you see how much massive those are. The Raiders are. And yeah, I think it was actually proven in the TV series when Sheba does ask Apollo to join them on this mission when they go to a base star. She goes, "There's 3 Cylons in there." She goes, but Apollo's like, "Yeah, but the third one doesn't do anything. He just sits there."
You know,
it's something along those lines.
They had an ominous sound to them when they were flying too. Even though you're not supposed to hear them in space, who cares? But they had a really cool sound to them too. Everything about them was ominous. I loved it.
And I mean, the one thing about this series is that yes, it's not scientifically accurate, but the turbos was the coolest thing on that joystick. I don't care what you got. They said, "I'm turbos out of here." I mean, there's nothing like it in Star Wars apart from Lightspeed, I guess. What are your thoughts, Kevin?
Oh yeah, you mean when the Vipers would go faster? Yes.
Oh,
yeah. I think that Knight Rider ripped that off, to be honest with you. You know, with the turbo boost with Kit. But yeah, that joystick that you saw, the Yoka, that thing was always cool, and you know, and the sounds, and then like the targeting computer on it and all that. Yeah, definitely, that was cool.
Yeah, Davis, your thought of turbo?
Oh, I just thought it was always just great because there was so many different little feats they could do when they hit the turbo, or if they didn't hit the turbo and the Cylon Raiders would fly past them and they could take them out. I was like, wow, you can do that in space. That's awesome. And I know later on we do see the Vipers, a tandem Viper, because if you remember in the first part of after Caprica's been attacked, Adama's like, "I'll take you down in my own ship." And you're like, how in the world did Adama and Apollo fit in the Viper? And he brought him down on his own ship. And you do see later on that you can have a second person in there, but I just thought that was always so great.
Yeah, the tandem Vipers. Yep, that's the one. So the pilot itself cost $8 million and was the most expensive made-for-TV movie at the time in 1978. The theatrical itself made use of Universal's brand new Sensurround system, which is obviously the theater itself built around would come a beautiful stereo system. Now, Universal Studios decided to re-release the re-edited version theatrically in order to recoup some of their high production costs, obviously. And this was too because Star Wars had just released and was still in cinemas for over a year in 1978. and continued into 1979 in some places in the world. So on July 8, 1978, 2 months before the debut, the film was released in Canada on 75 screens. The film had its US premiere September 11, 1978. I can't remember where it was in Australia, though. In Australia, it went to drive-in cinemas locally. And I actually found some old news clippings, which I'll try and put up on the Legal page a little bit later. And those, believe it or not, actually have it being placed with Richard Hatch and Lorne Green doing a little press junket. So, which would be interesting to see what they were doing back then too. So in October, the film was shown overseas. Well, here we go, including Australia, Europe, and Latin America, as well as San Antonio, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, Phoenix, Arizona on November 17, 1978 as well. Now, what's interesting is this was a start for a little bit of a, obviously, theatrical outing for this series. Obviously, we had The Living Legend a little bit later, which also came out on a VHS and DVD. And even the Reimagined series has done similar with, obviously, its own style as well. Now, in Australia, I did see a 1980 telemovie put out. I think it might have been the first episode of When They Come to Earth. Did you guys get a Galactica 1980 movie as well?
Not a 1980 movie, but we did get the original movie. And actually, I asked my wife, Erin, who, of course, you guys know is an Australian, and she remembers seeing it on the big screen when it came out in 78. So her and her family were always going to the movies, but I don't remember the 1981. No.
Okay, Davis?
I don't remember the movie per se of Galactica 1980, but I do know it was released on VHS because I went to Blockbuster one time and I saw Galactica 1980 and I was intrigued by it and I watched it. And
was that basically like a 2-hour pilot that was cut into
I think
two parts
so.
on TV? Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing was like the fact that you could actually see these models just as good on a big screen back then too, and it really held up for that too. Now, we've talked about some of the differences in this version versus the one that you got in obviously the episodic format. So minor differences: the broadcast pilot and the cinema release were Baltar executed by the Cylons, which we've talked about. In the television version, he is held for public execution before being shown mercy by the Cylons. Obviously, they showed just how much a good character it was too. I mean, where would they have gone without Baltar, do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, you have to have. I think it's more sinister to have a human villain teaming up with the robots, basically, than just having these automatons, that you can't really get emotionally attached to negatively or positively. And I think Baltar was a good balance of that, because he also says in the film too, is like, I know how the humans think. I know where their tactics. I know what they do. So he makes himself valuable, and knowing what he knows about Adama and everyone else and all the survivors and where they might go and what they might do makes him an invaluable ally to the Cylons.
Really does. I mean, what about you, Davis? Do you think they could have done something without Baltar?
I think they could have, but I don't think it would have gone over as well, because I think you see a certain dynamic, because Baltar, he is the traitor to the human colonies, and even President Adar on the Atlantea was like, where's Baltar? When the attack starts, and somehow Baltar gets off the ship and then meets up with the Cylons. But I think later on we do see Lucifer, who is voiced by Dr. Smith, and Baltar go at it a lot, and there's some nice banter with that. So I think John Colicos did an amazing job as Baltar, and I think you never see him have any type of remorse for what he did, but you see him willing to work with Adama at times.
Oh, without a doubt. Now, folks, we come together now with a review of our thoughts on this opening. And we're going to be doing a review and rating out of 5, let's just say Battlestars, we'll call it. And we're going to do this for each of the episodes that we cover before we head into a little bit of trivia and stuff like that. So for me, this is a really strong opening. It is probably the second best series of episodes The Living Legend is my favorite personally. But I would give this 4.5 Battlestars out of 5 for the introduction, strong effect work, and the Stu Phillips score. Kevin, what do you give it out of 5 Battlestars?
Yeah, it's funny. I have this playing in the background, and when they talk about the budget, I think it was he said it was $8 million. I think it was
$8 million
for this.
Yeah. Yep.
You could see where the money was spent because the costumes, the setting, the special effects, and the models and just everything. It's done quite well for a television series. The production value was done really well compared to what you were seeing back then. And to be perfectly honest with you, there wasn't a lot of sci-fi on at TV during that time. You had Doctor Who, and then what else? A lot of it was dramas, a lot of it was westerns, a lot of it was crime stuff, And I'm looking back at like a lot of the computers, the set of the bridge of the Galactica, and seeing the production of the Vipers and the launch bays and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to give it a 5 Battlestars out of Battlestar. It was a great opening. It's what brought us in. This is what made us fans. This is where the nostalgia hit us. Boom, right in the face.
Nice. And Davis, does it get 5 from you as well?
I'm going to say yeah, because not only is the special effects, but the music, the storyline itself, the characters, everything. George Lucas, I know, once said it best. He said special effects is one thing, but if you don't have a good story, it's not there. And you've got a great story. You have the special effects, which are really still good. And you have the music and the characters, the storyline itself, it makes you want to question more, like what happened with this? Well, what happened with this? That's one reason why Hatch wrote his novel series, because you want to find out what happens. You want to find out what's going on. As we go later on in the series, there's going to be more questions that are never answered, and you can speculate yourself about what goes on or what did happen with it.
But Richard Hatch was able to fill out some of those holes and some of those plot points, right?
Some, not all.
Yeah.
That's right. Unfortunately, the series was probably a book or two pulled short before he was able to wrap it up. But you get some great stuff. The continuation of Commander Kane in particular is just gold. And then Sheba, obviously, having her father back, all that sort of stuff. Now, quickly before we wrap, guys, I'm going to talk about a little bit of the small amount of merch that came out at the time of just this movie version came out. So there was a photo novel released in early '79, which is a very highly prized collector's item. If you've got it, it's worth quite a few $1,000s.
What's it called? I'm sorry?
It's a photo novel.
Photo novel. Gotcha.
Yep. So in this one, it's due to each image being taken from a 35 millimeter film cells. So the quality of the image, the photos, is just apparently beautiful. And this was further compared to the glue became brittle with age on the glossy paper they used to print it too. So if you've got this version of it, apparently it's really mint. The other one was Stu Phillips' soundtrack to the pilot, performed by the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra. It was put out in '78 by MCA Records. Apparently is extremely sought after. And they put it out in '78. It was re-released in '99 and issued again in 2011. So I do believe you can get it on Amazon if you can find it. A paperback novel was produced in 1978. Now, I have still got that somewhere, and that novel. And that is one that's got a lot of the different scenes that were cut from it as well. The story was adapted into comic books by Marvel Comics, which I had a UK print of. I don't know if I still got that. And an audio drama was created by editing the film's mono sound and adding narration by Lorne Green. Released on MCA Records under the title The Saga of Battlestar Galactica.
I want that on CD now.
Yeah. And it runs for about 50 minutes as well. So obviously with that, we had continuations and with, different areas, whether it be book and vice versa. But this was our first slice of Battlestar Galactica, folks. And we will be continuing this with, of course, the next episode in that series. So if you are out there right now, grab yourself a copy of the original series, The Blu-ray is probably the most accessible one that's out there now, or on streaming. That's right. Grab those.
You can buy the entire series on Apple, I think, for like $24 or something like that.
That's right. The DVD print versions.
Yeah, that includes Galactica 1980 as well. So yeah, it's a good purchase. And
if you can, grab yourself a copy of Armageddon as well. The great Richard Hatch Armageddon. That's the start of that series. I'm currently reading Warhawk, the second of the books as well. And you get the No Men in it too with Gardock. And of course, it's all about honor. Is it not, Davis? Great series. So, folks, I want to thank Kevin and, of course, Davis for joining us here. This series is only going to get bigger and better with your input too, folks. So definitely drop us a line, whether it's at the Lethal Mullet on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, X, or Blue Sky, wherever it is, wherever you see this, and obviously on Fandom Podcast Network. Even comment on the podcast page, fpnet.podbean.com. Grab yourself a shirt, hat, apron, spread, who knows, from, of course, T Public. We've got all the shows there from Couch Potato Theatre, Union Fed, Type 40 Blood of Kings, Time Warp, Waypodge, LM. I don't know what show that is.
Got my Lethal Mullet shirt, rocking it right now, man. I'm proud of it.
He's got it down here, folks, rocking it. I've even got my coffee mug somewhere. This has been Lethal Mullet for, of course, Battlestar Galactica. That's a mouthful, folks. An episode guide to the original series, of course, and we'll be taking out very soon with, of course, Lorne Green's classic narration. And first of all, Kev, thank you so much for being on this first episode.
You bet. I was looking forward to this, man. This is a good nostalgic dive for me. I love this series, and it holds a special place in my heart.
Awesome. And David, I hope you've got that Viper fueled up for that second episode too.
Oh, I am ready to go. You just tell me to launch with.
Awesome, folks. We'll catch you next time, this same channel here at the Mulletstar Galactica. Get out there, jump in your Viper, and take out some silence. We'll catch you next time here on Mulletstar Galactica on Fandom Podcast Network.
Fleeing from the Cylon tyranny, the last Battlestar Galactica leads a ragtag fugitive fleet on a lonely quest, a shiny planet known as Earth. Thank you for joining us here on the Lethal Mullet and FPN's Mulletstar Galactica. We'll catch you next time. Be sure to check us out at fpnet.podbean.com, and of course, the Lethal Mullet on all socials at The Lethal Mullet. We'll see you out in the stars.